licensing at Vic Roads. Dave Shelton, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Now, I visited your new hub, as it's called, in the CBD earlier in the week. You know, it was a fascinating visit. If I could just throw some questions at you, because I've been thinking about what I learnt that day. In terms of people learning how to drive, you made a comment that often parents were actually better instructors or better at teaching their children how to drive than professional driving instructors. Is that really true?
Yes, it's very interesting actually, Tom. I think the general belief is that professional instructors actually produce safer young drivers. Interestingly, we've had some work coming out of Germany who in fact previously required that all of their learner drivers did all of their supervised driving with professional instructors. They then made a decision to open that up to mums and dads as well, and so they did a comparative trial between the safety of young drivers who just driven with professional instructors and those who just driven with mum and dad. And what they found was that parental supervision for learners produced safer drivers, and not just a little bit safer, but a lot safer. So,
why is that? I mean, are instructors just teaching to the test as opposed to teaching to actually drive? Is that the conclusion?
I don't know that we can jump to those conclusions. Firstly, I'd just say that our instructors fulfil a very important and necessary part of our whole learning to drive system that we have in Victoria. But when we look at that data and see that young drivers have 20% fewer crashes, 20% fewer traffic infringements, then clearly there's something coming from mum and dad that the driving instructors can't give. And I guess as any parent would look at that, they'd probably say, well, isn't that pretty obvious? Mum and dad actually care deeply about the outcome. They're role modelling here. They might in fact undervalue their role modelling for teenagers, but the reality is they're role modelling all the time.
It's funny though, because I mean, my mother attempted to teach me to drive, and she had a habit of closing her eyes and hanging onto the seat while I drove, and she and I both agreed that getting some professional instruction was probably fairly important, fairly essential to my survival on the roads. All right, well, there's point one. Parents are often better driving instructors than the professionals. Now, when I was there at the new hub in the CBD, I noticed a lot of, and I believe they were overseas students because I heard some of them talking in Chinese, although I guess they could have been Australian Chinese, but let's assume they were from overseas. Now, when people arrive here from overseas, from any other country, if they have a driver's licence in their country of origin, are they granted the ability just to drive here on our roads, or do they have to sit a test?
Okay, so it depends firstly on what sort of a visa people have come to Victoria on. So if you come to Victoria on a temporary visa, you may be just a visitor, you may be a student. But for the duration of that limited temporary visa, you're able to drive on your licence, provided it's a full licence from the country that you've come from, and you just need to make sure it's either in English or you have an English translation that goes with it. Now, if you, for example, however, if you came on a permanent visa, you're staying here in Victoria permanently, you need to switch over to a Victorian licence.
And does that mean you have to sit a test though?
You will need to sit a test if you are from one of the majority of countries that are not recognised here in Australia. So there's about 45 countries in total that are recognised in some form here in Victoria, and if you come from one of those countries, then you don't need to sit the test.
Okay, so what are the sorts of countries where you don't have to sit a test?
They will typically be the US, the UK, a large number of European countries, several Asian countries as well. They're listed on our website. The places, more importantly, that aren't recognised are typically ones that have much poorer safety record, particularly for young drivers.
Is India recognised?
India is not a recognised country, and the second aspect of India is a really good example, actually. The licensing system is also important for its identity management, and so India, as an example, just like Australia, issues its licences at a state level, and there's a huge variability from one state to the next in the quality.
Is China recognised?
No, it's not.
It's not. Okay. Does it matter if they come from a country where they drive on the right-hand side of the road rather than the left? Does that make a difference?
It doesn't appear to. We don't have any data that tells us that that actually does make a difference, although having personally experienced driving on the opposite side of the road overseas,
It's difficult.
Intuitively, it feels like it should, but the data says no.
So the data says there's no issue with people who come from where they drive on the other side coming to drive on our side. There's no real problem.
Not when taken on statistically in large numbers. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen every now and then for individuals.
Automatic gearboxes versus manual. Now, I still like to drive a manual car, and my current car is a manual. I do think manual gearboxes will go the way of the dodo in the next 5 to 10 years. But at the moment, if someone takes their licence test on a manual, can they drive both a manual and an automatic on our roads?
Yes, if you start on a manual, then you're fine. The question's often asked the other way around. People will start on automatics just because they feel a bit safer doing that. And it's not, in fact, uncommon to start practicing on an automatic, and during your learner period, you swap to a manual later on. But if you do get your P-plate on an automatic, then you do need to wait until you've got a full licence to get a manual licence, unless you reset the test with a manual.
Okay, so if you take your P-plate test on a car with an automatic gearbox, you must, during the period of your P-plates, stick with an automatic car. You're not allowed to drive a manual car. But if you do get your licence on a manual, you can drive either type of gearbox.
Yeah, that's right.
That's interesting, isn't it? Do you think, out of interest, that, in new cars, manuals will disappear, as I predicted?
Listen, I thought they'd disappear a long time ago, and they haven't. So, and I'd have to say I've got one of each at home at the moment. So, why did I do that? I think I like driving a manual car sometimes.
That's the thing. I just enjoy it. I actually think it stops you from stops you from falling asleep on the road because you've actually got something to do. But we will take calls shortly. 96900 693. Any questions you like for Dave Shelton, Director of Registration and Licensing at Vic Roads? Tell me, at what age do we grant L plates here in Victoria, learner plates? When I was young, I think you had to be 17 years and 9 months or something before you could get your L's. But I'm pretty sure you had to be 17. What's the age now?
Yeah, so you can get your learners at 16 now.
16?
It's been that way since 1990.
Sort of shows how old I am then.
It does.
Interestingly, the 18 age bracket for getting your probationary licence has been in place, I understand, since the late 1920s. But there was, in fact, an exception for that during the Second World War.
Oh, really? Because...
So what's interesting, Tom, is that David from Vic Roads has just told everyone that driving instructors are not as safe as parents, which only confirms, Tom, the research that's been out for a long time that tells us driving instruction is ineffective and you shouldn't do it. My question is, why does David have a test at Vic Roads that when people pass it shows a 30% increase in injuries and crashes, and all the statistics come from those who pass the test? So my question to David would be, how about changing the test and the instructors?